In a city where millions rely on the badge for protection, fewer than 1 in 10 cases of police misconduct ever reach an official report, and that silence is costing Durban more than crime ever could. Because today's story isn't just about rogue officers. It's about a senior police figure breaking ranks, urging ordinary residents to speak up, and exposing a hidden battle inside law enforcement that could redefine trust, accountability, and power in South Africa's streets. Imagine witnessing an officer cross the line and realizing the real question isn't what they did, but whether you would dare report it. Hold that thought, because by the end of this story, that hesitation becomes the center of everything. Now the first real shift begins. When Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi Mkhwanazi publicly urged Durban residents to report rogue police officers, the statement landed like a thunderclap. This wasn't a routine press soundbite. It was a rare admission that the danger to public safety doesn't only come from criminals in the shadows, but sometimes from uniforms in plain sight. In a country with a long, complicated relationship with policing, those words carried weight, heavy weight. Because when a top police official calls out corruption from within, he's not just challenging bad actors, he's challenging a culture that survives on silence. Power protects itself best when no one speaks. That single sentence disrupted that balance. Trust fractures quietly, but accountability begins loudly. Durban streets provide the real-world context for why this matters. From busy taxi ranks to late-night patrols in residential areas, police presence is constant. Yet behind that presence, stories circulate, unofficial, whispered, never written down. Allegations of bribes, intimidation, evidence tampering, and selective enforcement don't always make headlines, but they shape how communities behave. People avoid reporting crimes. Witnesses disappear. Victims choose endurance over justice. When Mkhwanazi used the word rogue, he wasn't softening the reality. He was naming it. And naming something is the first step toward dismantling it. Silence is expensive. What makes this moment different is who said it. Senior police leaders rarely invite scrutiny from the public. The unspoken rule is internal discipline stays internal. But here, that wall cracked. By asking residents to report misconduct, Mkhwanazi effectively transferred power back to civilians. Not in theory, but in practice. He positioned the public as a necessary partner in cleaning up the system. That move carries risk. It invites backlash from within the ranks. It exposes leadership to criticism if reports aren't acted upon. But it also signals confidence. Confidence that accountability is stronger than embarrassment. Institutions only heal when exposed to light. The timing is no accident. South Africa has faced a steady erosion of trust in public institutions, with policing often at the center. High-profile scandals, viral videos, and court cases have painted a troubling picture. In that environment, the call to report rogue officers becomes both a defensive and offensive strategy. Defensive, because it acknowledges the problem before critics can weaponize it. Offensive, because it reframes the narrative. The police are not a single corrupt entity, but a contested space where integrity and misconduct are in conflict. That distinction matters a lot. Inside the force, the message lands differently. For honest officers, it feels like validation. Many have long complained, quietly, that corruption stains their work and puts their lives at risk. A rogue officer doesn't just steal or abuse power. They compromise operations, expose colleagues, and empower criminals. One bad cop can dismantle an entire unit's credibility overnight. When leadership publicly condemns that behavior, it sends a signal that integrity is not weakness. It's armor, and armor keeps everyone safer. For the public, though, fear is the real obstacle. Reporting an officer is not the same as reporting a crime. The power imbalance is stark. People worry about retaliation, harassment, or cases being buried. Mkhwanazi's call confronts that fear head-on, even if it doesn't erase it. The unspoken promise is protection, but promises must be proven. Trust is rebuilt not by speeches but by outcomes, arrests, suspensions, court cases, consequences. Justice is visible or it doesn't exist. This is where the story deepens, because urging reports is only step one. What happens next determines everything. If reports disappear into bureaucracy, the call collapses. If whistleblowers suffer, the message backfires. But if action follows, something shifts fundamentally. Communities begin to see policing not as an occupying force, but as a service again. Cooperation increases. Intelligence improves. Crime prevention becomes possible. Accountability multiplies impact. Halfway through this unfolding narrative, the stakes become impossible to ignore. This is the moment where viewers must decide whether this is just rhetoric or the beginning of reform. If you believe accountability matters, this is where engagement counts. Share the conversation, amplify the issue, and keep attention focused. Because silence is exactly what corruption feeds on. As the story continues, the second wave of insight emerges from unexpected places. Community leaders, legal experts, and even former officers point out a critical detail. Rogue policing thrives where systems are weak, not just where individuals are corrupt. Poor oversight, inadequate training, and political interference create fertile ground. Remove the environment and misconduct struggles to survive. That means the conversation can't stop at reporting. It must extend to reform. Structural change is slower, harder, and less dramatic, but infinitely more effective. There's also a psychological layer often ignored. When citizens report wrongdoing and see no result, they learn helplessness. When they report and see justice, they learn ownership. Policing becomes collective, not imposed. Mkhwanazi's statement taps into that psychology. It invites people to see themselves not as subjects of authority, but as stakeholders in safety. That reframing is subtle but powerful. Responsibility shared is power multiplied. Critics, of course, raise valid concerns. Some argue this places too much burden on civilians, shifting responsibility away from internal affairs. Others warn that without strong witness protection, the call could endanger vulnerable people. These critiques matter. They sharpen the conversation. Accountability doesn't mean recklessness. It means systems designed to protect truth-tellers as fiercely as they pursue wrongdoers. Reform without protection is theater. Yet even with those concerns, one fact remains. The call itself broke a pattern. For decades, misconduct survived because it hid behind uniforms and fear. Now, at least rhetorically, that shield is thinner. And in public trust, perception often precedes reality. When people believe change is possible, they act differently. When they act differently, institutions are forced to respond. Momentum is real. As Durban watches closely, this moment could become a template or a warning. If handled well, it sets a precedent for transparency across provinces. If mishandled, it reinforces cynicism. The difference lies not in words but in follow-through. History will judge the actions that come after the statement, not the statement itself. Accountability is not announced. It is demonstrated. And that brings us to the finishing point of this story. A police leader urged the public to speak. That invitation now hangs in the air, unanswered or accepted. What happens next will reveal whether power in Durban flows in one direction, or whether it can finally move both ways. Because when citizens and honest officers stand on the same side, rogue behavior has nowhere left to hide.